that they can hear us. Hello, my name is Najah Roberts, and I would like to welcome you to the Virtual Underground Railroad. I'm really excited about this platform, and the reason why is because I got into financial services about 12 years ago, myself and my husband, because we really thought that we could be the change that we wanted to see. But the deeper we dove into financial services and the products that were being offered, we really realized that we couldn't help close the wealth gap, which is what both of us aspire to do. So the reason I'm super excited about this platform is because you're going to gain so much information. Listen, let's just keep it real. I pay a lot of money every month on subscriptions, and what I want to do is make sure that that information is at your fingertips so you don't have to pay for it like I have to pay for it, because some of these things I have to know. But one thing is for certain, inside of my platform, the Virtual Underground Railroad, we have a 360-degree program. We pull together some of the top experts in different industries to ensure you have the right information from people you can know, love, and trust. And so we're excited about this platform today. Every single week, I will be coming to you personally. There will be an Ask Me Anything session. You are going to be so glad that you're a part of the Virtual Underground Railroad. And I'd like to say thank you first and foremost for trusting me with your family and your learning experience. Have an incredible time at the Virtual Underground Railroad. See you inside. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Wine, Women, and Crypto. That was my first time looking at all the things about the Virtual Underground Railroad. So I'm super excited about that commercial, and I want to thank the staff for their incredible job in putting that together, and I just appreciate everybody. But, ladies and gentlemen, today I am so honored, and I should say, ladies and the brave men who love us. I am so excited today because we have a phenomenal young lady in the space. She is so knowledgeable about a lot of things that concern the cryptocurrency blockchain ecosystem. And she's here today to share some of her expertise. And I would like to introduce to some and present to others Miss Amber Baldet. She is incredible. Amber, welcome to Wine, Women, and Crypto.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to do this.
I am very excited to have you too. I've been seeing you around the space. I know the work that you're putting in. And some women, you're all the things that you do speak for themselves. But before we get into your presentation, would you mind just telling us a little bit about you, where you grew up, how what was your intention? Because we didn't all intend to be in this space when we started out in school. So how did you grow up, and what were your intentions as far as a career was concerned?
Oh, we have an extra guest with us today too. So Lily will be joining us. And if you hear screaming, it's not a baby. It's just a cat. She's been fed, I swear. Um, well, I grew up in Florida before I moved to New York, which is where I live now in downtown Brooklyn. Although I've been here for years and years at this point. And the things I studied were political science and economics. I was always interested in why the world works the way that it does, and kind of systems level thinking of who's in charge here, and why are the power structures of the world the way that they are. So I ended up working in banking. I realized at that time, someone finally told me that the people who wanted to make money studied finance, and the people who wanted to understand why other people were making money studied economics.
Yes.
So I was on the wrong side of the fence. But what was cool at the time was this was like early internet era. Like I don't know if anybody remembers GeoCities, but I I started making, my first Buffy the Vampire Slayer choose your own adventure computer programs on GeoCities in the mid 90s there, before I went to college, obviously. And through that, kind of got into the early hacker scene. Um, Hackers also came out in 1996. There was some good Angelina Jolie happening in that film. So
Yeah.
I was like, she's a badass. I want to be that. Um, and so I didn't really realize there was no like women in STEM, women in computer science. It didn't exist at the time. So I didn't realize that I was like different than what the other girls around me were thinking about or doing. And eventually I ended up building financial technology. So that's what happened.
Wow.
Um, Go ahead.
No, I said, wow, was a pretty big end up, which was a great start to where you are today. And I say a start because you've done so many things. And I know that you're going to share with us what the industry that you're engulfed in actually handles. But tell us some of your most pointed accomplishments. What are some of the projects that you've been most proud of?
Well, when I was working at JP Morgan, where I was building just kind of traditional trading systems, that was also during Occupy Wall Street. And I had a variety of friends who were artists and journalists and, broadcasting from Zuccotti Park out there at the time. And it was the first time that I realized that while I was on this journey of kind of understanding what was happening inside this megacorp, which was very personally gratifying, I wasn't really participating in the change that I wanted to see at a larger scale. And to be fair, I don't know if the people that were outside were, having that much of an impact either. But it coincided with around the time that the Bitcoin white paper was published. And I don't think I read that until 2011, when a bunch of my hacker friends wouldn't shut up about it. But it was kind of just a bit of a hacker in joke for a long time, because we all use the kind of cryptography that's involved, and Sybil resistant, all this kind of stuff. All the concepts that were there had evolved mostly from systems where we were like preventing email spam, and it was just wild to see all of these concepts come together in a digital cash concept, and to be working at an organization that cleared over $1 trillion in US cash a day, while looking at something that, you could count the number of people that were mining Bitcoin and, put them around a conference table. It didn't really seem like the two would ever meet. So when there erupted the kind of blockchain, not Bitcoin stuff that happened around 2016, I kind of got pulled into a team that ended up taking charge of that at the bank. And it was just a really unique opportunity to be in that place at that time. It's not luck because I did a lot to put myself there, but at the same time, it was amazing to be able to talk to people at such a high, pay grade, but, degree of power and seniority about these topics, and have them actually listen to me. So that was the first big win. While I was there, we created a version of enterprise Ethereum called Quorum, which was really cool. But then eventually I left to found Clovyr, which we can talk about. But I think my biggest accomplishment right after that was I got to testify to Congress, to the House Agricultural Committee, because some people don't realize this, but it's actually the Agricultural Committee that covers commodities.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're trying to decide, how do we classify these tokens? Are they cash, securities, commodities? So it's people who grew up thinking about like pork bellies and like corn futures, and now a senator or a congressperson is like sitting there like, I have a flip phone, what am I supposed to think of Bitcoin? So that was a surreal experience, and I've gotten to present at a variety of places, from MIT to South by Southwest to whatever, so there's been a lot of cool moments around there.
Yes, you have done some incredible work in the space. You have been an advocate, a voice, not just for the space, but for women, where there looked like there was just predominantly men, which we know that there is, but you have definitely put your fingerprint and footprint in the sand as it relates to, you know, just some of the things that they needed to hear from the right people with the right background. I'll say it that way. And in 2016, I want to go back just a teeny bit. You stated that the big, huge conglomerate that you're at, they were having a conversation about blockchain, not Bitcoin, correct? And I just want to kind of, because I've never heard anybody really tell us, was the bank in a panic mode at that? Was the bank starting to feel a little bit of pressure about Bitcoin, the blockchain? I know, I know Jamie Dimon had a lot to say about individuals utilizing Bitcoin that worked for his corporation. All the while, I kind of figured there was some sort of a division being put together back in the background. But what was kind of the feel around that blockchain, not Bitcoin movement in the bank?
Yeah, and I mean, I should probably say there are a variety of things that are under NDA that I'm probably never allowed to talk about.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but I can tell you the general sentiment here. There's not a sense of competition really. I mean, when you're clearing $1 trillion a day, you're not really concerned about like a tiny little thing. But
Okay.
what they were concerned about, or what they're interested in, was the ability to represent other types of assets and move them around in the same kind of way that Bitcoin was moving, which was without intermediaries. So there was a lot of work to move existing representations of securities into the data structure of the blockchain, and then to be able to move it around these, between counterparties and whatnot. The problems that I was working on specifically were things that have always been close to my heart, which is, data privacy. And there's, as you know, the data on a blockchain is always visible, which is fantastic for auditability, but really awful if you don't want people to know who you're trading with, what you own. There's some really cool stories for anyone who's interested in high frequency trading about how institutions try to front run each other by side channel tapping the blips on the wire and literally building buildings closer to the trading exchange so that they can front run their peers by microseconds. So
Wow.
I mean, yeah, it's really cool hacker stuff. But that stuff applies to blockchain systems too. And so it was a really neat time to kind of pull together real advances in cryptography, like zero knowledge circuits, and to put them onto these blockchains where a lot of people think they're secured by cryptography, but they're not. They use common public key encryption, but an economic model of security.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification and bringing me back down to where I needed to be. Because for some reason in this space, and then with me having an over the counter exchange, I just always feel like these banks are just like, oh no, we're not. We're just total. I don't want to say total the opposite of what you said. I just thought that they were spending more time and effort to just keep us out of this space, because that's what I feel like every time I try to do a bank or I get a bank account shut down, and just all these other things that happen in the space. Even when banks say, "Hey, we accept Bitcoin, we're setting up Bitcoin accounts." Well, they're not really. They're doing something different, and people don't believe me till they go and try to open up an account and say, I'm doing cryptocurrency. Just that little word means you're not getting a bank account in the space. And I really felt that there was something different, something underlying that had been going on since maybe 2016. So thank you for sharing
No, I mean,
that.
you're completely right. But it's not like an existential fear so much as it's just unknowable business risk, right? And like taking on risk costs them money, and if there's not enough upside yet to take on that risk, then they just don't.
Okay.
It's not like a moral panic, or as soon as will make people money, then they'll figure out how to do it.
Right. Right. I gotcha. Well, thank you for that clarification, and thank you for sharing some of the intricate parts of your life. And we're going to hear about Clovyr in just a second. So, if you want to go ahead and start your presentation, we'd love to hear from you today.
Oh, sure. So I did bring some slides just because I have a tendency to ramble, but we can. I'll share that because what I was hoping we could talk a little bit about, in addition to Bitcoin and crypto that's popular in general, is a broader concept that I've thought about and worked with for a long time, which is just the broader decentralized web. And
Yeah,
so sometimes people don't necessarily know how to separate that or differentiate that
right.
from token incentivized systems. So sure, I can
Yeah.
share.
And for those of you that are new to kind of the term, she's going to go through it, but it's Web 3. So if you've been hearing this thing about Web 3, she's going to give us some really great information. So we're ready.
Okay. Yeah. So when I left JP, the startup that I founded is called Clovyr. And what we're focused on is making decentralized apps or anything that you can self host. That literally means apps you can run yourself, easier to run.
Mm-hmm.
And people might think, why do I have to run stuff myself? Why is that revolutionary? Do you have a token? No, there's no token. There's no blockchain. It's literally just helping people run things on a computer. Why is that revolutionary now? Because we don't do it anymore. We log into Facebook and they run everything for you and they own the data and they sell the data. Same thing, you log into Twitter, you log into Mint to manage your finances. Even if you're using Bitcoin wallets and things, you're most likely logging into an application that shows you the front end for that on a website. Very few people are actually running, say, a node themselves. And that's a problem. So helping people to actually run this stuff is one of the ways that we can actually, quote unquote, take back our data. So a lot of people want to take back their data. Nobody knows what that means. Nobody knows where to start, and it's really hard. So yeah, what do all these things mean? You might have heard of DWeb, Web3, peer-to-peer applications, the decentralized web, dApps, replicated state machines. All of these are there are people you can argue with, over a good beer about every single one of these, and they will nitpick the difference, right?
Yeah.
Um, but here's the Google search term frequency over the last several years of them. You can see they're kind of all like a mishmash. It's kind of all the same. That's from 2017 to 2018, which I think I gave this presentation at Crypto Springs a couple of years ago, so which is why I grabbed it. But the numbers are like the same today, basically.
Okay.
Everything is it's all mixed up. But if we zoom out back to 2004, what do you notice there?
Mm. Yeah, something stands out big time.
Yeah, so Web3 apparently already happened in 2009.
What?
Congratulations, we're on it. So why doesn't anybody know about this? What the heck was that? Well, Web3, does anybody know? Or I can't see the chat right now, so
No,
but
I can't see the chat, but my mouth is still dropped because
okay.
I'm looking at these dates and I'm thinking, what? Wait, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
information. So no, why is that?
Well, that is because around 2007, Tim Berners-Lee, who was one of the early creators of the internet, decided that there was time for another web revolution, and what it needed to involve was a new kind of markup of everybody marking up everything that we put on the internet and basically tagging it.
Okay.
Um, so if you post somebody's name, it should be tagged as a name, first name, last name. If you're posting an address, we can split that up into the parts of an address. If you're posting about coffee, you can tag it coffee, tag it beverages, see what I'm getting at? It's like kind of a shared way of thinking about
Right.
the world. So it's better to search that way. It allows us to organize information better. And
Mm.
so then when we all built applications on top of this new kind of grand tagging scheme of all information in the world, we'd be able to access all the blogs who ever talked about coffee.
Mm.
Sounds great. But if you want to know a good blog about coffee, where do we go today to find a blog about coffee? Like
Oh, where
who?
would
Yeah, what would you do if you wanted to find a blog about coffee?
well, I would actually put blog about coffee because I'm just the simplest term pulls up
In
everything you need.
in into like it's so ingrained in us, you don't into Google, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I can think
because
twice. Google is my best friend. I was just
that yeah, that's what happened is Google
yeah.
said this is ridiculous. No one is going to mark up all of the content in the world because what if you're the writer of the blog about coffee, you just want to write your blog and publish it. You don't want to spend an extra hour, doing all of this tagging.
Yeah.
And so Google got smart, and instead, what they did is I'll just skip ahead here. Well, they scraped all the blogs and they built their own system of tagging. And they maintained the one index that became the definition of what is what in the world.
Okay.
And it turns out that, what some people think, so maybe we all agree on some tags of coffee, but you start talking about what's beer, and legally there's different, definitions of that in different countries.
Mhm.
Or if you talk about what's a sensitive topic, that's not easily marked up, but
Right.
they became the authority on what these things are. So machine learning. So that's a picture of a machine learning.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And the second one is business models. Those are business models. Uh, I'm that's a nerd joke, but
That's
uh,
not. It's really cute. It's really cute.
okay, thank you. And so what they did is they took that information and they figured out a way to monetize it and to make money off of it and to create ad-driven revenue. Whereas what Tim Berners-Lee was working on was an open system of democratically shared knowledge that anyone could build an open client on top of, and it didn't need an economic incentive because the incentive is our shared collective human understanding of the world,
Hmm.
and that failed. So that's why Web3 didn't happen. And that's why Google owns most of the information in the world at this point.
Wow.
And so we blame people, right? We blame people for not marking up their blogs. But I want to know, do I need an umbrella now? What time is it in Berlin? Like, curate my photos for me and put them in my scrapbook based on facial recognition. Like that stuff is useful, and because they've provided useful things with all of that information, we've been lulled into this, like, what, there's no alternative, there's no other way to get this information because it's so fast and it's at our fingertips and it's now so much part of our life.
I am
uh,
so guilty of that. I am so guilty of that.
it,
Yes.
we all are, but it's not users are going to use useful stuff, like that's the point, it's okay. uh, but what we can do now with some of the innovations on the web is actually challenge that only Google is able to provide the answers for everything, or only Amazon is able to provide a marketplace of diverse goods,
Right.
or only again, Amazon is able to provide most of the infrastructure for the internet.
Mhm.
So awareness is growing. Yes, there's like privacy challenges. Every couple years, there's some insane debacle that comes out, like Cambridge Analytica, and people say, "I'm going to quit Facebook," and they complain about it on Facebook, but rarely quit Facebook. But most increases in usability and changes in user experience aren't driven by everybody in the world deciding they want something to be different. They're driven by, like, either Apple saying this is what it's going to be, you don't get a headphone jack anymore, that's design. Or they're driven by, like, regulation, like GDPR in Europe requires people to treat data differently. So you can see people searched for that. Now you have to be compliant. No one cares about it anymore. It just is part of our fabric of our culture. So now you get Bitcoin. People do care about making money, right? So
Yeah.
economic incentives matter. And if we can build some of these new systems of what people are calling Web3 now, uh, as more decentralized alternatives to what we have, we can't screw up the business model thing again. The machine learning part, we can kind of solve now. Like, that has been democratized, and we can even do machine learning in more distributed ways. I think you'll see that come out more and more over the next 5 to 10 years. But we have to work on the incentive system. And so that's why we're seeing all of these crazy experiments with different tokens and different coins and NFTs now, right? Some of them will survive. Some of them we will look back on and say, what were we collectively thinking? But it doesn't matter. They're experimental, and that's cool. But overall, none of this stuff, like, I don't know if you guys know Fortnite, the game. If you have kids, they probably play it.
Yeah. Yes.
All of the things that we think are important, that we care enough about to, get on Wine, Women, and Crypto about once a month, almost nobody else in the human race cares about or knows about yet. So you are so early to this.
So early.
And it's hard. It's easy to like forget how early it is, and sometimes it feels like everybody else knows, and it's very easy to take for granted how much you know already, that you assume everyone else does, but they don't. So that's why we're ambassadors across our communities, but also it means that there's just tremendous potential for things to change over the next decade, and that makes me hopeful that we can change the dominant paradigms. And I don't want to destroy Google or Amazon, but we can use existing cloud compute in ways that are more empowering and private for us, rather than just renting, having all of our data be owned by them.
Yes.
Oh, here's my collection of Facebook privacy whoopsies. That was
No, listen,
so, go ahead.
Ask you to let me sit on your couch and you give me some help. And I'm going to say it this way because I know that there's others out there. And I want you to go through your whoopsies first, and then we're not going to stop your presentation, but I have something to ask you about removing ourselves from the platform. But go ahead and talk about the Facebook privacy whoopsies.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not going to go through all of these. The takeaway here is, do you trust that the Facebook metaverse is going to respect you and your data? I mean, when people tell you who they are, believe them.
Right.
This is every year. Every year.
Here, that there's been a huge thing. So the reason I said I'm gonna sit on your couch is because, and not for me so much, because not for me so much, but I hear people all the time that are trying to run a business. They're small, they're trying to run a business, they're trying to get eyes on their business, trying to get eyes on their project, and they constantly say, if I get off this platform, this is where the people are. Like, if I leave this platform, then my business will ultimately fall through the floor. I won't have the traction that I need. What do you say to that woman or man who is trying to remove themselves from Facebook to get into other? I mean, because it really is, it's hard for a lot of folks. Like, I'm at my max followers on Facebook, and that's only because the community that I serve is on Facebook, like so much on Facebook, and they're not looking into the other possibilities or options, because like you stated, we're so very early, they don't even really know about them. So we'd have to teach about other platforms before we're, it's just kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing, especially in my community. And so I'm just asking, what would you think, how would you think we could remedy relatively quickly enough, able to move our listeners and followers over to another platform? Like, have you ever sat and thought about or tried to help somebody make that transition? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, relatively quickly, probably not. Network effects are real, and needing to reach where your audience is absolutely crucial. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is, of course, a difference between being a kind of end user human on one of those networks that puts all of your personal data and every one of your thoughts and maintains all of your familial connections via that platform, which you could probably find alternatives to right now. And then a business use case where you're trying to reach the people who are already there.
Mhm.
in that case, you can the first thing that you try to do is to use the platform and treat it as the dumbest thing possible. So like every additional insight that they offer you, all of that is coming from the data of those humans at the end of it. Every bit of like things that you sell on their platform because they facilitated that marketplace gives them more information, which is like in Amazon's case, they will literally build products as Amazon Basics to compete with anything that is successful from a third-party seller
Well,
inside their own marketplace,
okay.
which is awful. So I'm not suggesting that everyone, that you move off of what is currently a successful solution. What I'm saying is that I think that we will see a migration
Hmm.
over the next decade that happens first very slowly and then all at once.
Okay.
Um, of that will be at this point driven mostly, I think, probably by creators, by content creators, because you can and you will be able to move from some of these publication platforms to publication platforms that change the ownership rights
Hmm.
of what you produce, such that it's like if you publish on Medium right now, you don't necessarily own the IP to the things that you put on their platform.
Yeah.
You can't control how they display it. You can't control the algorithm of where they put it. You can't control the advertising that gets displayed next to it. You can't, you can't take your audience with you. You have to, tell people I'm moving.
Yes.
So we'll see people at the edges, those trailblazers, especially the people who are making a lot of money, whose revenues are getting absolutely crushed by the percentages that these platforms are taking now, because they have to get more and more exploitative. Um, that the only way those platforms can continue to make money and increase their quarterly earnings for their shareholders is to become ever more exploitative of the people who are actually creating value in that ecosystem, who are the creators.
Okay.
So like that's why Patreon no longer lets you charge under $1, right? Because their margins on their credit card fees, like it wasn't profitable for them. But the
Right.
only thing that there's two things that keep creators in those places. One is, yes, audience discovery is a challenge to do in a decentralized way, and you know we're going to need systems to push content from one central hub that you control to all of the channels where audience is,
Oh,
as people move. And but secondly, the reason people stay on something like Medium is or Patreon is because they run the infrastructure for you. Because you want to write or make videos or share your goods in your marketplace. You don't want to spend your time like figuring out what patches like WordPress needs. So or like what region of Amazon is down. So the part of the work that I'm working on at this point is making that infrastructure portion no longer a problem. Just
oh,
reducing the friction of that to the point where that's no longer part of the decision that you need to make. The
oh,
audience stuff will come, but there are a lot of people working at that layer on that problem, and I think that it will be a migration to these new ecosystems.
thank you for that. Thank you. So we have hope.
I
We
I hope
have,
so. If we didn't have hope, then what else? What do you do
yeah.
if you don't have hope?
I think sometimes, me specifically, I know that I need to get off these platforms, and hence the reason why we started the virtual Underground Railroad, so that I could do something different and be in another place where we can control our data, where we can control what we are able to say. And we're because I'm in the space I'm in, educating about cryptocurrency. Of course, we get pushed down on the algorithms, and I shouldn't say I do. I loathe some of the sites that we're having to participate on, just because we have to right now. And so I'm just really hoping, um and I'm excited about, the innovation and the platforms that are being built like yours, to just really help cut out the friction for everybody, in some way or another. And I know there's always going to be a little bit of friction, but anything that can be done to just make this a little smoother, I think is great. I think what you're doing is awesome. And I'm looking forward to it. So I know you cut off your slides, but You're welcome.
Oh, well, I mean, there's more there, but we can just talk. I don't want to be lecturing forever, but I think that what I hope emerges is, and some folks might remember this if you were on the internet in the late 90s, but they were called web rings. And this was when, you join a fandom for something,
Uh,
and somebody'd have a website where they put up themselves, and then they'd be like, who else likes Buffy the Vampire Slayer? I'm dating myself at this point. And so you would put that badge on your site and join that web ring of people who like that topic, and then you could click next and you could just go to the next site in the web ring. And so it was this kind of list that everybody who was part of that community maintained
right.
together. And it was like a mini ring, right? It doesn't solve all the problems in the world. It doesn't help you find things way over there, but it helps you in your local kind of cottage community.
Right.
So what we can create with existing networks, like Mastodon, for example, is one alternative to Twitter that's been around for quite some time.
Hmm.
I don't know, it's in the news, every time somebody important gets deplatformed from Twitter. Most recently, I think both Parler and whatever Truth.social thing Trump was trying to do were forks of of Mastodon.
Yeah.
Um, Now, the Mastodon terms of service explicitly say that you are not allowed to use it in a variety of ways, and they are violating that variety of ways, but that's a legal battle. Um, but those networks, it it is one of the most frustrating parts of my job, that the current narrative about free speech is co-opted by people for whom free speech is hate speech.
Yes.
So it's very difficult to navigate that. When, I mean, I know this, I shouldn't swear since this is going to be on YouTube forever and ever. But it Yes, we have to stand up for free speech, but that can mean that what we should have is a robust, thriving group of local book clubs and, like, cocktail parties where you only invite the people that you like and and there's no trolling and no jerks
No.
because they're not allowed in the space.
Yes.
And that's not like safe space itis. That's just like how people would normally run their life in the physical world. You invite people whom you trust, and that group can grow over time. But you don't need to only have one central town square where everybody like yells the most outrageous thing to generate engagement, but that's the only model that generates profit for Twitter. So that's why it's how we participate. And it
Yes.
doesn't have to be that way.
Yes, and that is really what we see right now today. And so I'm just I thank you for breaking that down and helping us really get a bird's eye view of you know what the space is all about. And I just think it's incredible. And we're nearing our time, and I want to just start I just really want to ask you a question about, because I know you have some innovative things that you're doing. Is there anything that we have, and then I know that there's so much, but is there anything that we have to look forward to from you in the very near future? Are there any projects that you're working on you like us to know about?
Well, right now, Clovyr has a beta out. It is for developers. So if that's your jam, then you can check it out. It's VS Code in the browser, in a decentralized, privacy-preserving way, which I'm pretty proud of. But that is the first app that will become kind of the basis of many app experience that makes an app store. And the next most important thing that we'll be launching is that app store experience, where it's not a walled garden app store, but anybody can create and publish applications. You don't have to use Clovyr tools to build them or anything. You can build them in the regular way. We're a distribution platform. So I will let you know as soon as you can download your own Mastodon node and run your book club on the Clovyr platform.
Yes.
But there's no tokens to buy or anything. Sorry, it's just computers.
Okay. And again, I want to make sure that all of our listeners, specifically women, are empowered. And I know that they're empowered by some of the things that you've said today. If there are women that are stuck in a dead end job and they're thinking about venturing off into this space, and they just really don't know where to start or what to do, what advice would you have for them today?
Um, well, I would approach it from probably two ends of the spectrum. So on the one hand, there's like the bleeding edge cool stuff where you can there's just so many jobs opening, and you can whatever skill set you have, there is a job in the crypto or web3 space that needs that skill set. There's, it's totally a fallacy that you need to be a developer or you need to understand cryptography or information security or anything else. All these people need writers. God, some of them need good writers. They all need artists and marketing and accountants and lawyers and street teams and everything else. So there's always a position there. But what I would encourage people to do is to not just get sucked into what like the kids these days are building, because a lot of them were not around for, like that 2007 and earlier era stuff that I'm talking about. And I think, are reasonably recreating a variety of things that are not a good idea all the time. And perhaps just unfettered capitalism isn't necessarily the way to go with the next generation of the internet. So I would suggest going back and looking up more stuff about specifically DWeb and exploring, for example, the Internet Archive,
Mm-hmm.
which was founded by Brewster Kahle. But reading through the history of the Decentralized Web Summit and sister organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation. But all of this that we're inheritors of now started with a bunch of hackers who thought information wants to be free. And
Mm-hmm.
we meant free as in free speech, not as in free beer.
Yeah.
So figure out what that means to you and what you want to see in the world that way, and find organizations when you go work for them in this kind of new Web3 definition that align with those ideals in a way that you're proud to support.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. I know that women around the world will be happy to get that sort of information about what or how they should be thinking about moving into the space. And so we appreciate that. And we're going to ask our team really quickly if there are any questions from any of the social media platforms that we're on.
Yeah, when I had the screen share up, I couldn't see any of the chat. So if I didn't answer your question, I wasn't ignoring, I couldn't see it. So if somebody wants to tell me anything if I missed it, as long as it's not questions about what coins to buy, because I don't answer those.
And neither do I. So, saying on all the platforms, you've done an incredible job there. So, there are no questions at current. And so, how do people find you? How do people find Clovyr? Can you tell us and we'll put it in the chat. It'll always be there. Not in the chat, in the links. Oh, she already has it up. She's on top of her game. It's at Amber's first and last name. She's on Twitter, and then her company is .io, right? Clovyr.
That is correct.
There.
And through that, there's a link to the beta there, but the beta direct is on clovyr.app.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Amber, for all that you do in the space, all the innovative ideas, and thank you for being the change that you wanted to see. Those words coming from your mouth definitely did not go unnoticed. And so I think that that's such an incredible phrase in the space that, those of us that were in something else and saw something different and saw the changes that needed to be made and just decided to take a stand over finances. And I'll say it that way. And it doesn't have to, the whole ride doesn't have to be you making a big change from, a six-figure income coming into a space where you're starting and, making things work. It doesn't always work out like that. But for those who did, or were very comfortable in some nice 6 and 7 figure jobs, depending on what that looks like, coming into this space. And again, being the change that you want to see. I say thank you, because I know probably what you were making over at your big company back in the day. And so thank you for making that.
It's probably less than what people think it was, because,
Really?
woman.
Brilliant. Okay.
But that aside, I want to say thank you also for having me be here. And I'll be honest, I spent all day talking to VCs, and it is nice to be able to be in a place that reminds me why I actually do this. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time and your lovely cat. Is that Lily? Was that
That's Lily. Yeah, sorry, she's
tell Lily the voice?
there.
She
She is.
heard me. Heard me. All right. Well, you have an incredible rest of your day. And again, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. That is another episode of Wine, Women, and Crypto. You have listened to the fabulous Amber Baldet, and you can check her out on social media. And please go and check out if you're a developer and you're interested in working on a beta project, as she stated, go over to clovyr.io and you can get involved right now today. So thank you all.